Today we're going to chat about how to get your watercolor paints ready to paint. Hey there, I'm Kate, I'm a watercolor artist, and welcome to my channel. Together we're going to break down watercolor concepts so you can feel empowered to dive into the world of watercolor and make a splash. Let's do it! This is my palette and I use watercolor from tubes. The paint starts out wet and I let it dry overnight. Let it dry out overnight, you say? Yes! Watercolor is unique in that it can totally dry out and then be reanimated with, you guessed it, water. Yes, that was a drum roll. Here I used a squirt bottle that I keep handy, but you can also just take your brush and dip it in your water cup and then onto your paint to reactivate the paints. You're looking at this and you're like, Kate, that looks like a hot mess. You would not be wrong. Usually I don't clean those little mixing areas, but for this example I did. All I did was take a damp paper towel, you can also use a damp rag, and clear the area off. Now that we've wet our paints, let's talk about how water affects your painting. Let's make some little paint puddles! What is a paint puddle, you ask? It is what I call the little blob of water and paint that you are going to use to create your amazing artwork. The ratio of water to paint is going to make a huge difference in the way that the color or pigment shows up on the page. If you have a little bit of paint in a mostly water mixture, it's going to create a very light paint. If you have a lot of paint with a little water, the color or value will be very dark and vibrant. Many watercolor artists don't actually use white paint, so by adding a lot of water to a mixture, it helps keep the area of the paper very light. My rule of thumb is that you can always start light and then go darker as you go. You can also add more than one color to an area to create new colors. Here I've added red on one side and then I'm adding a little bit of yellow to the other, so I have a bit of a range in this mixing area. If you feel like your mixing area is getting a little too crowded, you can always clear out a little bit of room. Here I just am not getting that bright yellow that I wanted to, so I'm taking a little bit of a piece of paper towel and I'm just gonna wipe it away. I'm also wiping the well where the yellow paint is, and that way I can dip my brush in water and get right into that yellow paint. If you're covering a large area with a watercolor wash, you're gonna wanna mix up quite a large paint puddle. It's the worst when you run out halfway through and you have to mix more and then it just doesn't quite match and part of your painting is drying and you're not ready for it. Just trust me on this one. When in doubt, puddle it out. As for consistency, you want your paint puddle to swirl around smoothly. If it's too watery, you might see the paint get a little grainy. If it's too much paint, it might start to feel like sludge. Yuck. The best way to find the right balance is for you to start painting. Dip your toe into the proverbial paint puddle. So, as I mentioned earlier, I don't really clean this palette. I like finding unexpected colors the next time I come back to it. But if I'm working with a very specific color palette, I will usually put it on its own tray or own palette to avoid any unexpected color mixing. Ooh, there's some confetti in here. This specific set of colors here is filled with all of my favorite go-tos. If you don't have my supply list already, go ahead and join my newsletter because that is where I keep all of my favorite colors and supplies. So when you're done painting, you don't really have to clean up your paints. This may be the best part of watercolor. Just let it dry and it will be waiting for you when you're ready to paint next. Happy painting, friends!